dog. Were both found drowning in a lake, and you could only rescue one, because, well, that's never really been explained. Which pitiful creature would you condemn? Which of God's children would you save? And only when you're staggered back to shore would you be apprised of your unforgivable mistake. There's someone in the future wishing upon a future star that they could travel back in time to precisely where you are. Sitting here bored, completed and senseless, wishing you were somewhere else. Some pointed brighter future, nostalgic story that we tell. I'm searching for three patterns in the noise. I'm paradolic, I'm seeing faces in the void, and in the void behind this face, the fragments falling into place. Loveless children lined up on a sheet interrupts the reverie. Suddenly it all seems very clear, like I'm in a frontier town tableau. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. Time to come to terms with mankind's default mode. Our grand pronouncements rendered patently absurd, but just the gentle prodding of a biblious universe. So tell me, which pitiful creature would you condemn? Which of God's children would you save? That told me I'd never learn to swim. Always been a cat guy anyway. Hello, I am Jamilah, and as a cat guy myself, I am more than appreciative to be talking about Propagandhi's Cat Guy for this episode of Unscripted Moments. The third song from the album, At Peace, Cat Guy, was also the second single released, accompanied by what is single-handedly the greatest music video of all time, directed by Randy Freakus. The song espouses the dark humor that is fairly common on many a Propagandhi record. It also displays the not unsurprising pensiveness. Given that the band recorded the album sometime before the current state of socio-political affairs occurred, we cannot attribute the song to be a commentary on what is happening. That said, as long as capitalism, imperialism, patriarchy, and colonialism exist, any of these songs are going to span generations, regardless of when they were written. The very first line of Cat Guy poses a question that is purposefully incendiary.
If baby Hitler and your family dog were both found drowning in a lake, and you could only rescue one.
Based on whatever we've learned, there is an automatic understanding that Hitler is bad. So without thinking, many of us would respond, "Of course I would save the dog." What kind of question is that? The thing is, the moment we automatically answer this question, it shows we haven't actually listened to the question. How can we ascribe a moral position onto a being who is essentially a blank slate? Another thing I think about constantly is how easily we are accepting of information without questioning it. Despite knowing that, yes, Hitler and the political party he was the face of was bad, based on heavily documented research over the course of many years. The thing is, though, how many of us have actually studied or taken anything more than a cursory look at what's been researched? How can we securely have ideological struggle against it if we're not prepared with the tools to properly do so? Even if our position may be correct, Hitler equals bad, do we know why that position is correct? Are we thinking of this position from a purely moral one, or also a material one? One shouldn't get on a pedestal regarding, for example, a right-wing low information contingent if the places they receive information from are from the same capitalist sources, just on the other side of the spectrum. But I digress. When realizing what the question actually is, if you would save a baby that could eventually become a fascist dictator, or the family dog, which could potentially fatally attack a baby, you imagine you are presented with a moral quandary. You begin thinking about the sanctity of life. You think about who you value more in the moment. You think about who would be more advantageous to save. And you begin to think about society judging you for the ultimate decision you would make.
Which pitiful creature would you condemn? Which of God's children would you save? And only when you stagger back to shore will you be apprised of your unforgivable mistake.
While your brain is rushing to make sense of the question, the first thing you need to do is realize the question itself is based on a false dilemma fallacy, or a what-if fallacy. This hypothetical question with the two extremes is not supposed to make sense, because baby Hitler is just that, a baby.
There's someone in the future wishing upon a future star that they can travel back in time to precisely where you are.
While there's a variation of possible interpretations, Cat Guy's ultimate theme, or one of the ultimate themes, seems to be, at least to me, calling to task the simultaneous moral posturing and helplessness of liberalism. Like with many of Propagandhi's songs, I listen to Cat Guy from the position of an organizer. As many parts of the world are forming new political and economic alliances, and as strikes and protests are consistently popping up and popping off, I see so many people in the West feel tired and at a loss in terms of what to do. My response is always going to be organization and political education. As the Great Bad Religion lyric goes, the art torpor of our inaction will be our demise. What we do now informs us of what is going to come in the future. Yes, there were plenty of people who marched in the streets at the No Kings March. However, the objective of the organizers and many who were there was harm reduction. The focus was on a president, but not the system that enabled that president. Despite the ever-present existence of imperialism, settler colonialism, state violence, and several genocides, the rationalization continues that while it won't be perfect, it will be better with a Democrat under the guise of there being a bit more relative comfort. It's the phony brighter future we conjure up so as to have a bit of solace amidst the pain. It's that nostalgic story we tell ourselves. If one is only focused on changing the symptom and not dealing head-on with the source, it may be difficult to see the potential for substantial change, thereby making one feel, again, hopeless and aimless. There's so much access we have to technology, and yet people are bored. People are aimless. People are reactionary. People remain in local echo chambers as opposed to building international alliances. The generations who will follow us will look at us and will perhaps correctly assert that we've squandered our time and our talents. For all we know, that future star looking down at us may have been that baby you let die, based on your presupposition that they were evil, despite not knowing who they would become. But again, I digress.
I'm searching for the patterns in the noise. I'm paranoid. I'm seeing faces in the void.
I feel like this lyric is the crux of the song. It is the literal center. It is the combination of the material and the spiritual. It is the searching for peace amid encountering that blinding rage. As many of us are inundated with a vast array of technological amenities, it can become easy to lose sight of ourselves, whether it is the increasing number of applications on the devices we use, or whether it is the bevy of information we are exposed to daily. It can be difficult at times to decipher what is accurate and what isn't. And while I have not mentioned it specifically, the overarching subject which I think about is Palestine. Amid the cacophony of misinformation, which most people are receiving if they primarily look at mainstream sources, is a series of direct sources. Doctors, aid workers, conscientious objectors, and more specifically and importantly, the people of Gaza and the West Bank who are directly being attacked. And even among the barrage of misinformation, it is because of that misinformation you see patterns of truth more than seep in. There's only so many times you can repeatedly say the same things before people understand those things can be debunked and countered with audio-visual evidence. Receiving news of death and destruction daily can indeed be disquieting. One's reaction may be to disengage, to shut down, or wish for a return to normalcy. It is a particular default mode that is heavily relied upon as a safe space from the outside world. However, the normalcy under capitalism is obviously reaching its final stages, as the folks who were most able to ignore that normalcy are now increasingly experiencing or are a direct witness to the type of violence that has happened to the rest of the world. It becomes less difficult to disengage, not only in terms of receiving information, but also spiritually, as the faces of the countless victims of capitalism continue to peer through the void of willful ignorance, misinformation, and the reverie of peace. Peace is often seen as the absence of war. However, the cessation of war is not defined by the absence of tanks and guns. Peace is the absence of class hierarchies, of gender-based oppression, of settler colonial violence. The lifeless children lined up on the sheet are enough to give one pause, whether it's the thousands of children in Gaza or the judge, jury, and executioner murder of Tamir Rice. We spend a lot of time thinking of fantastical hypotheticals and making grand announcements about what we would do were these situations to happen, while the real life we aim to ignore is actually happening before our eyes. There is a point where an imploding house is difficult to ignore, and if everyone remained neutral in an imploding or burning house, the result would be obvious. When armed with accurate information, we should be better prepared to know how to respond.
So tell me!
After all that, we have now returned to a portion of the opening questions. Knowing what you now know,
which pitiful creature would you condemn? Which of God's children would you save?
the pointlessness of the question is further honed in on with the song's punchline.
As for me, I never learned to swim. Always been a cat guy
The
anyways.
joke is also on anyone who gave thought to this question with any sort of seriousness. Because at the end of the video, you have an adorable puppy who looks up, does a head tilt, and walks away. While the song does satirize the luxury of selective concern, it is by no means condescending. Like much of what appears on the album this song derives from, Cat Guy is self-reflective and contemplative. Many of us have experienced being immobilized by fear, creating hypothetical narratives so as to make ourselves feel better. Back to its spiritual elements, the song also carries great humility in what I feel is its ultimate message. We are but a tiny speck in an enormous universe. Our individual musings mean very little in the larger scheme of things if we are not working collectively to create the world we actually want to see. I play music, I am a person who focuses heavily on lyrical content when I'm listening to it. With that, I realize I haven't talked much about the musical component of the song. While my cover was more in the vein of F sharp minor, which I tend to default to since it is my favorite key in the whole world, Cat Guy is actually in F minor. It is a song that has made me both tear up and cry. As a matter of fact, while working on this episode, I did tear up listening to it. Upon first listen, I was captivated by the chords. Upon second listen, as usual, I immediately began harmonizing. Upon further listenings, I continued to marvel at how phenomenal of musicians Propagandhi truly are. They describe themselves, for all intents and purposes, as progressive thrash, but I feel like even that qualifier is limiting. Cat Guy certainly has thrash elements, but it's also got elements of prog and jazz fusion. Todd Kowalski leads me to wonder how anyone feels the bass holds no importance in a band. It is not simply an instrument to hold the bottom end. Kowalski is having a very crucial conversation with George Zamileski in Rhythm Section Commiseration before they join Chris Hanna as the vocal public messenger of said commiseration.
Suddenly it all seems very clear, like I'm in a frontier town tableau. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. Time to come to terms with mankind's default mode.
This song is pure perfection. How could it not be? Without punching down, cats, the greatest, most perfect people in the whole world, are the punchline of the song. The song was also accompanied by, again, the greatest music video ever in the whole world, a well-edited montage of stock footage of cats, kittens, and one adorable puppy. Nothing has ever beat this video, and nothing perhaps ever will. I did play the song for my two cat parents, Peebo and Wacho. You might have actually heard them running around and shuffling in the background.
Always been a cat guy anyways.
Normally, though, they are not that amenable to music at all. However, they are a little more receptive to this song, despite them not understanding the words coming out of the speakers. I also sing the song to them all the time, and they actually don't move away. So my guess is that they're into it, because maybe they figure somehow, cats? Is this about us? I don't know. There are two things we can agree on here. A, ACAB, all cats are best. And B, Propagandhi knew what they were doing when they decided to release this song. And you know what you were doing when you decided to listen to this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day or night, wherever you are in the world.